We are live. It is week 11 prep time. Before we get to the prep show for week 11, there are a few topics I'd like to discuss here on the Fantasy Football Vampire Forum, as we have done all year long. We have discussed certain topics with prep. The show is about good process. We've tried to isolate and identify what good process is for fantasy football. And I need to get something on my chest here for this week. There is no celebration of bad process. We have good process, and that good process works. And that good process is what helps your fantasy football team succeed. This is cause for celebration. Victory lap, dance party, whatever it is you do to celebrate. This is what it is that we like. We have good process. We get better with our process. We identify things. We identify the right data points, the right film watching, what our eyes see, what the data tells us. We match those together. We get better at how we see football and how we play fantasy football because we are continuing to grow our right process. It is an evergreen item. It is not stagnant. It is dynamic. It grows. But we do not celebrate bad process. There are those this week that label themselves as so-called fantasy football analysts, and they are themselves lying to you. They are not good analysts. They are not fantasy football analysts that have your best interest in mind. No. They will tell you, I knew what was going to happen, and say certain players or a certain player will not finish number one overall because he did it last year, so therefore he won't do it again. What goes up must come down. Those are exact words. And while that may end up being true, it is an easy thing to say certain players or a certain player will not finish overall number one at his position like he did in a previous year. That's an easy comment to make, because even if that player finishes number two overall, that comment is correct. That comment is, in fact, true. He did not finish as number one in his position. That's a very low-level thing to say, and to boldly proclaim that this won't happen because it already happened. But then to take that and double down to see a player get injured, a player of that magnitude get injured, and not only hurt the game upon a game that we love to play, fantasy football, it hurts that player because their career now is jeopardized with that injury. They're now having to come back. But to take that and victory lap and say, I told you so. I told you this wasn't going to happen. That's bad form. That's bad process. You don't celebrate injuries. If you celebrate injuries as what it was going to happen, that you knew was going to happen, that's bad process. If you're out there celebrating players, NFL players' injuries, if those are the type of analysts that you listen to, stop. That is what separates NFL from fantasy football. That is what NFL players dislike the most. When somebody behind a microphone who does not play football, does not put their livelihood at the line every single week, but can go out and tout what it is that they think is the right thing, and then celebrate when somebody gets injured. That's bad form. That's bad process. Just because you're loud enough and say, I told you so loud enough, does not mean you're right. We don't celebrate injuries. And in fact, the players that have been injured, the one that's been most talked about this week, Cooper Kupp, his injury is not celebrated. And if you're celebrating it, or if you've seen or heard people celebrate it, you should not listen to those people. That is bad form. That is bad process. You can say Cooper Kupp may not finish as a wide receiver 1 overall this year. That's fine. But a minute he gets injured, that is not mentioned again. You do not mention, I told you that wasn't going to happen because he got injured. Cooper Kupp is a great example of why it's so important to look at fantasy football points per game versus overall points. Understanding how those correlate and the differences. I needed to get that off my chest this week as we prepare for this week 11 slate. It's bad form. We don't celebrate bad form. We don't celebrate bad process. Good process does not always equal fantasy football results. We take our good process, we tweak, we make adjustments, we learn, we get better. We don't take bad process and celebrate. If you take bad process and celebrate the victories of bad process, that then is the problem. We have to be better. Here at Vampire Nation, we strive to be better. We are better. We're better because we look at our process first and foremost. When we take our process of analytics, mix that with our film watching, what we see, that is always going to change. Because information that we have changes. Football is a low data point game. There are 17 data points. I've already discussed this at length. We take those 17 data points and we use that to make the best judgment calls each week. Because each week we have a new data point. This week we have 10 data points that we go into for the week. And we have to look at the trends. The data may show us one thing, but on field over the last few weeks may show something different. And we have to see that trend change. And know is the data from overall what we've seen changing and be ahead of that curve, or is it not? We are tweaking our process always. I urge you, if you are a connoisseur of fantasy football, like I am, like many are, don't fall into the advice of bad process and say, well, it was right, so therefore it's good. Bad form, bad process should never be celebrated. And when you victory lap injuries, that makes you look bad. It makes the whole industry of fantasy football look bad. We don't celebrate that. I can be right and a player gets injured, making me right, and I should never celebrate. Doesn't matter. Bad process. Celebrate good process. Understand good process sometimes doesn't hit the way we want. And when bad process hits, we have to understand why. That creates better process. Be a fan of good process. Listen to good process. Understand this is not just something that is plug and play. Have a good process. That's how you win. That's how we all win in fantasy football. Okay, that's done. The heavy stuff is done, hopefully, for this week. Be sure, like, subscribe on our YouTube channel, Fantasy Football Nation, Vampire Nation. Like us, follow us on Spotify for our podcasts that get uploaded each week. This week, I am doing the prep show for week 11. Next week, with the holiday upcoming, we will be doing with special guests Grant and Jake, or at least Grant, one or two, both, at least one of them, maybe both. Monday, we'll be coming out with our both reaction roundtable that we have and that we've had throughout the season, which has been fun, with special topics that Grant is always able to provide for us. But then we will also have our prep show mixed in with that show. It will be a long show on Monday coming up. Because of the holiday, we will have different recording timetables. So we'll do both a reaction show from week 11 and preparing for a week 12 slate. You'll have 3 games on Thursday next week. The rest will be on Sunday. It'll be fun. But before we get to that, let's get to the week 11 show. Let's go through the slates as we do each week. I'm going to condense this down as much as I can because you don't want to hear me talk about who you already know you need to start. You want to hear me say why I like certain players or I don't like certain players. More than consensus or less than consensus. Excuse me. First up this week, the Bears are going to face the Falcons. The Falcons are a 3-point favorite. The game total is a 49-point total. On the Bears side, Justin Fields has been the latest hot commodity of quarterback. If you picked him up and you've been streaming him, you're still streaming him. You're loving life. But be aware, his reign will probably end this year. He is not the next Michael Vick. He has a tough schedule, especially come playoffs. So if you have not already seen what accommodations you need to make to have a backup plan, Fields may not be the guy in playoffs that led you to the playoffs. He may let you down. That doesn't mean don't start him this week. By all means, start him. Atlanta is a good defense to play a quarterback against, meaning they are not that good against the quarterback. Nope. In fact, they are top 10 in the worst amount of allowing points, which means they allow a lot of points to the quarterback position. With the backfield for the Bears clearing out a bit, Khalil Herbert sadly goes to IR, and it's sad because he is the better of the two running backs. But this does pave the way for more workload for David Montgomery. So if you have Montgomery, you like life a little bit better because his job is not as affected as when Herbert is in the backfield. For pass catchers, Cole Kmet has been the hot commodity, but again, the Bears' pass offense is very low volume. I said this before when Chase Claypool went over. Chase Claypool could have a higher target share with the Bears' offense, yet have a lower target total than when he was with Pittsburgh. Why? Because the pass volume is lower. Now, Kmet will not sustain the level of touchdowns that he's had the past 2-3 games. This is not going to sustain for the rest of the year. But doesn't mean you're not streaming him still. Also, I prefer Mooney over Claypool. But if you have to use both in a pinch, either one will work. It's kind of condensed offense right now. On the Atlanta side, Mariota is the streamer du jour this week. If you've had him, if you're streaming him, you're still streaming him. You're not going away from that. This week, I honestly see this being Cordell Patterson. He's been off IR now. He had a game back. He is going to take the lead role again from Tyler Algier. He is going to be the guy again. Atlanta's pretty simple, and also similar to Chicago, they are a very low volume pass. This is good if you like the running game. If not, then it's really Pitts and London. Those are the two guys that most of the targets funnel to. It's very frustrating if you have either of them because they get the volume, but they do very little with that volume. So it's pretty frustrating. But you're still starting them. The flyer here is Olamide Zaccheaus. I know Damiere Byrd has got run, but Olamide Zaccheaus is the guy if you really need a flyer, and this is really, really deep leagues here. That would be the guy. Other than that, this is pretty condensed offense. It's really not a whole lot to it. Let's go down to the next game. Bills and Browns. Now, this game has been moved to Detroit due to weather. And prayers up that Bills got out of Buffalo and was able to get to Detroit for the game. Bills are an 8-point favorite with a 49.5-point total for the game. The tied for the second highest this week. And that's behind the Chiefs Chargers, so that's not on the main slate. So if you're playing DFS, it is tied for the highest game total this week. On the Brown side, you can run against Buffalo, and the Bills run really well. Behind Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, they like to run the ball. So expect still their workload, especially being a dome. This helps for the game be a shootout potential. So you should like that. If you're a fan of football and fantasy football, we like points. The unders have scored more often this year than not in football, which means scoring for fantasy is down as well. To correlate. But you're still starting Chubb. You can flex Hunt. I really think the Bills' defense is, while they've been banged up recently, the Bills' defense is tough as name only right now. It's not necessarily the matchup of, we can't do anything against this defense. It's so good. It's not as good as I think it's going down. Buffalo against QB used to be the toughest matchup. They are dropping. Each week they drop. Against running backs, they really are not the toughest. They're still tough. I'm not going to say they're not. But yet, that's where they've come each week. They're now more middle of the pack versus top tier. So that's where data we have to look at over the course of the year. How does this change? Has our perception changed as fast as what we see? As what the data shows us. In Buffalo's case, I don't think it has. Yes, they're still a tough defense. I'm not going to say they're not, but this is not the vaunted defense that we perceive them to be. For pass catchers, if David Njoku is playing, I would start him. I would stream him. You've held on to him. It's a good stream. If he's not, and it's Harrison Bryant, I would sit Harrison Bryant. He is not the guy to stream against Buffalo. Again, I said it's a good defense. It's not a great defense. But the two pass catchers, again, we're looking at how does fantasy points get produced around this offense. It's first the running backs, and then it's the wide receivers. And by wide receivers, I mean it's Amari Cooper. And this actually helps Cooper this week, being a dome game, even though it's on the road, but it's a dome game. That helps Cooper with no bad weather to, deal with. But then I still like Donovan Peoples-Jones. He has been more efficient. His target share has increased the past few weeks. You can still stream Donovan Peoples-Jones this week, especially as a flex position if you want. You want a high ceiling guy? He has the most yards receiving this year without a touchdown. Donovan Peoples-Jones is coming. His big boom week will be here before you know it. If you don't have this guy, if he's out there on your waiver wire, you need to add him now. This is not a, well, let's wait and see. No. His mini boom week happened last week. He had 99 yards. If that doesn't convince you, I don't know what will. Donovan Peoples-Jones is coming. It's going to be good. If you have him, if you've stashed him, you're going to like life in the fantasy football playoffs. Otherwise, you have to face him. You're not going to like life as much. On to the Bills side. Josh Allen's starting. You're starting him. You're starting Diggs. I would still start Gabriel Davis. You can start Dawson Knox as a streamer because the tight end is really, literally a wasteland. You can stream pretty much any tight end. The only tight end you actually feel confident in is Travis Kelce. That's only because Mark Andrews is hurt. George Kittle is coming up to that, threshold this year too. But Travis Kelce is the only one you're like, there's no question. I'm starting him. So yeah, you can stream Dawson Knox. I would also play Gabe Davis. But, fun fact, against running backs, the Browns are the second worst. And by worst, I mean best if you're playing them against running backs. Hines, Singletary, they're streamers. You're starting them. Josh Allen has a lot of rushing upside too. Don't forget about the running backs this game. They could play a potential on this game. This is an actual fact. This is what could happen, where they could lead on the run game. Buffalo doesn't need to lead on the run game, but they could. And it could be a good game for the running backs for Buffalo. Don't be surprised about that. Next up is Eagles and Colts. The Eagles are a 7-point favorite. And again, this is a 45.5-point game total. Pretty high game total. We saw the Colts last week under new head coach Jeff Saturday go out and beat the Raiders. This should have invoked a firing of Josh McDaniels. We'll get to the Raiders in that dumpster fire later. But it didn't. Jeff Saturday is not Frank Reich. He is an interim coach, not worried about his job. He's not trying to save it. He's doing things that need to happen for the organization. Going back to Matt Ryan is a smart decision. That helps the players for fantasy football. Sam Ehlinger is not a good quarterback. He's a 6th-round pick. He has very little upside. Matt Ryan helps this team. Jonathan Taylor's healthy. You're obviously starting him. I still like, especially with Matt Ryan playing, it's a tougher defense with Philadelphia, but you can still move the ball against them. Pittman and Paris Campbell. Those are the two receivers that Matt Ryan likes. I'm not touching the tight ends because, 1, they're injured, and 2, it's a mess. So I'm not streaming those. They're way in the dumpster fire of tight end wasteland here. On the Eagles side, you're starting A.J. Brown. He's healthy. You're starting Jalen Hurts. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. You don't need me to tell you start Miles Sanders. Although, don't be surprised if Hurts kind of struggles a little bit. Indy's a top 10 defense against quarterback. Don't be surprised when they struggle a little bit. They may lean on Sanders a little bit more. Hurts and Devontae Smith are still the two pass catchers you like. Now, Dallas Goedert went out. So, who's the guy? Right? It's Calcaterra. That's the guy. That's who I would say go with. He's a 7-footer. He's athletic. He can get the targets. Now, I also think that Miles Sanders actually has a boost for targets. Why? When a pass catcher goes out like Dallas Goedert, where it's an underneath, that's the type of routes they run. Studies have shown that running backs are the ones that are boosted by those targets. So don't be surprised if Miles Sanders has actually an uptick in targets. This is a pretty simple offense to figure out. It's Hurts, And especially with Goddard out, it's Hurts, Smith, Brown, Sanders. Take a flyer on Calasatera. I would say take a flyer on him if you need a tight end if you're desperate. And I already mentioned the Colts side. I can start Matt Ryan. I actually am okay with that. It's a tougher matchup, but if the Colts get down big fast and we don't subscribe to trying to predict game flow here, that's a bad process. Again, going back to process, we don't do that. That's bad process. But if they get down big, Pittman and Campbell are the two target leaders. That's who's going to be targeted by Matt Ryan. Those are the two guys to play. And then you're still playing Taylor. He's a generational back. You don't shy away from him. Next game, not quite as fun to talk about, but it's Jets and Patriots. This game has a very low 38-point total. I think it's the lowest on the week. So Vegas thinks this game is going to be very defensive. It really could be. It may not. It may surprise us, but I would not be surprised. The Jets, I believe, well, I can't remember off the top of my head if they've faced the Patriots. I believe they have faced the Patriots already this year. But regardless, one, with divisional games, pandemonium ensues. These are the games that the unexpected will happen. Why? It's a divisional game. And two, especially if these teams have already played this year, what happened last game will not happen and be the same way again. Why? Adjustments have been made. We should know this. Both defenses, if you play in a league that defenses are played, or if you want to play a DFS streamer, Jets or Patriots are a good defense to play. Either one. Patriots have a good defense. The Jets have a good defense. Honestly, if you have options, Stevenson for the Patriots is a good streamer. Honestly, he's not a streamer at this point. He's probably more of an RB2 this week. You could play Myers, but that's probably the only pass catcher I'm playing out of the Patriots is Jacoby Myers. I'm staying with the quarterbacks if I can help it. Staying away from the quarterback for the Jets as well. I would not like to be in Zach Wilson's shoes. Garrett Wilson's really the only intriguing pass catcher that I like out of the Jets, and that's only because, and they did this last time too, Patriots don't play too high as much. They play single coverage on the outside. Garrett Wilson had a good day against that the last time these two teams played. So, does that mean this will happen again? Absolutely not, but I take that chance. So, I like Garrett Wilson in this spot as well. Don't like Michael Carter or James Robinson as much, but I get it if you have to use Carter or Robinson. I like Carter more. I think Carter is the lead back still in this backfield. Robinson has value, but I like Carter more. Next game up, Rams and Saints. And the Saints are actually a 3-point favorite. Well, let's talk the Rams side first. Cooper Kupp, obviously we all know. And those of you that had him on your fantasy rosters, I do lament with you the loss of Cooper Kupp. It is a sad day when such a fun fantasy football player, a fun NFL player goes to the IR. It's a sad day. But that means his target share now gets distributed to others. And it won't be just to one person. There are very few players that have a 30% target share on the year. Cooper Kupp has one, a high target share, and two, high targets. He's top 10, if not top 2 in targets for the whole year. So this is something that won't be easily replaced. Now, Matthew Stafford cleared concussion protocol. He looks to play. This is good for the offense if Stafford plays. The Saints are kind of in the middle of the road with defense across each position of fantasy football. They're not, uniquely stout. They're also not a pushover at the position, at any position against fantasy football. So you could stream Stafford if you needed. You could use him in a 2 QB league if you really needed. We'll see how the distribution of targets is allotted now. Allen Robinson might get a bump. Ben Skoranek is a good streamer if you need. He was a guy that was being used already in a Cooper Cup type role with just less volume. So he could see his volume increase, which let's see what he does with it. Tyler Higbee is very volume dependent at this point, but that O-line is so bad, he has to block more often than not. That hurts his upside with fantasy football. When it comes to the backfield, honestly, I like to stay away from Darrell Henderson. And I'll admit it, I was a Cam Akers enthusiast. I have been, and that hasn't worked out. I'll own that one. But the streamer here I like is still Kyren Williams. That's the guy that if you have opportunity, go out and snatch him, stash him. He's the guy that could take over the more of the backfield role as the season goes on. Kyren Williams is the sneaky play here for the Rams. On the Saints side, we all know, we all see it. Andy Dalton needs to be replaced. We want Jameis Winston back. Please, free Jameis Winston. We all are praying that. Andy Dalton's bad. I'm not starting him. He had one good game against the Cardinals this year, and that's pretty much all he's done. So if Jameis Winston is starting, I like it a lot better. If not, I like it a little bit less. Anyway, you're still playing Kamara. The only pass catcher I actually like is Chris Olave. I know Landry came back, but Chris Olave is the guy that he has shown what he can do. He also has better value with Winston versus Dalton. Streaming, you can do Juwan Johnson. He has relegated Adam Troutman to whatever Adam Troutman wants to be relegated to. It's not a lead role. So Juwan Johnson can be streamed, but that's pretty much it on the Saints side. This game is also very low total for a 39-point game. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but if not, that is what I have down. So next up is the Lions and Giants. This game is a 45-point total, with the Giants actually being a 3-point favorite. I like the Lions in this spot. I like both the Lions and Giants this year. I like them from the beginning of the year. I had oversold the Lions a little bit, and I'll own that. The Giants, let me look over my notes here for where I have the Giants at against the quarterback position, and they're on the upper side of average, but they are not at all a bad matchup against quarterback. So you could still start Jared Goff here. I know the numbers may say, no, stay away. But the Giants, I think, they've taken advantage of the schedule that they've had. I think the Lions are better than what the public here is thinking. Also having Amon-Ra, the sun god, back in the lineup, that helps. We like that back. We like that for our purposes here for fantasy football. That's good to have him back. So we like that. So I would start. I'm on Ross St. Brown. DJ Shark was listed as off IR now. I don't know if he will play in this game, but we like that if they're getting healthy. We hope Jameson Williams comes back soon. But this team is going to get better. This team is a year away from actually being good. So I would start, especially in 2 QB leagues, I would start Jared Goff. You're obviously starting Amon-Ra St. Brown. I prefer starting Swift. It appears he is healthier than anticipated this week. So if you have Swift, I'm rolling him out. I'm going to start him. I may relegate Jamal Williams more to the bench than not. On the Giants side, honestly, you're starting Daniel Jones. He is a good streamer. He is a starter. The Lions are a bad defense. We've all known this. Daniel Jones can get there both with his passing and with his rushing. Saquon Barkley is an automatic start. You don't need me to tell you that. The 2 pass catchers I actually like in this game are both Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson plays out of the slot. He has yet to have that big game. It is coming. Wait for it. It is coming. But both Slayton and Robinson should have a decent week this week against the Lions. Panthers and the Ravens, and the Ravens are a 13-point favorite. This game is a 41-point total. Now, on the Panthers side, it's Baker Mayfield season again. Don't start him, please. Mayfield's bad. Mayfield's not good at football, at least the NFL level football. And he hurts DJ Moore. DJ Moore, I think, averages about 38 yards a game with Baker Mayfield this year. It's very sad. We only hope and we pray that he finds it, and I'm wrong. So I'm really down on both DJ Moore and Terrace Marshall. What PJ Walker was doing the past few weeks was very exciting, and now I'm not as excited about it. What you have to watch is Chuba Hubbard is actually healthy now. I've been saying this for a few weeks, that Chuba Hubbard, when he's healthy, he's going to cut into that Deonta Foreman role. He's going to cut into that workload. It's about to happen. So if you've held Chuba Hubbard, watch it happen this week. He's going to take over more of that backfield from Deonta Foreman. So if you haven't traded away Deonta Foreman, didn't sell high, that was your opportunity. But you're now going to miss it. So, yeah, sorry. It sucks. But on the Ravens side, Lamar Jackson, he appeared to have been on the injury report as he was sick. So he looks like he's still going to start. And I apologize, my mic is being very weird right now. So I apologize. Okay, that'll be better. Sorry about that. Lamar Jackson, he was sick, but he was still saying head coach John Harbaugh said he's going to start. He'll be the starter. So he has been down from his hot start of the season, but you're still going to roll him out. You're still going to have that. Now, the not so comforting fact about the Ravens pass catchers, they have 865 yards on the season. That's not good. As a whole, they have 865 yards on the season. That's really not good. I think the player that they traded away in the offseason, Marquise Brown, he's missed 6 games. He still has over 400 yards receiving. That should tell you something. So, if you're a pass catcher, if Mark Andrews plays, you're obviously playing him. You can play the running backs. I like Gus Edwards, better than I think it's Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake still has value here as well, but I like Gus Edwards better. Please, hopefully J.K. Dobbins can come back soon. This will make the team better. Unfortunately, Rashad Bateman's on IR. He's going to still miss. Is Devin Duvernay is the only pass catcher I really like. If Andrews is out, honestly, if Andrews is in as well, I'm okay starting Isaiah Likely. Because Likely can be used as a wide receiver just as much. And they need help. So I'm okay starting up Isaiah Likely as well here. So don't be afraid of that. It's just rough. I don't necessarily see the Ravens being a 13-point favorite on this one. I see this game potentially going under and it being a lower scoring game. I know there's potential, but this is not the Ravens team of a couple years ago where they're just lighting the world on fire. That's not them. Commanders and Texans. The Texans. No, excuse me. Yeah. The Texans are a 3-point favorite. This game is a 40.5-point total. Now, on paper, this looks like for the Texans that Dameon Pierce is going to have a tough matchup. Dameon Pierce has had a lot of tough matchups. He's getting volume. Dameon Pierce is an interesting guy. Trade deadline's coming up. I could make the argument for or against trading for or trading away Dameon Pierce. Volume, talent, opportunity, those are things we look at. What is this player's talent? What's his athleticism? Plus, what's the opportunity? He gets those. The Texans are a team that doesn't matter what the game script is, they are running the ball, and they run it a lot, and they run behind Dameon Pierce. Now, I know Eno Benjamin was just signed to this backfield. We'll see what type of impact he has. I think he more relegates what Rex Burkhead did versus what Dameon Pierce does. They want Dameon Pierce to be the guy. Honestly, the Commanders, they don't have a scary defense. They're getting better, but they don't have a scary defense. This honestly could be a low-scoring game just because of both offenses are not as good as the defenses. Houston's worse than the Commanders, I get that, but Houston's a kind of finicky team this year. They're not as bad as what people perceive them to be as. So don't be surprised. The only, honestly, I'm staying away from Davis Mills if I can. The only pass catcher I actually really am excited about is Nico Collins, and he hasn't done much. He hasn't produced what we thought he could so far. So that kind of means it's Dameon Pierce or nobody else on the Texans for me personally. On the Commanders side, this is the spot to start Brian Robinson. If you roster Brian Robinson and you're not starting him this week, why are you rostering him? Cut him then. Antonio Gibson, also, I love Antonio Gibson this week. He has the pass catching upside and the rushing upside this week. You can stream Taylor Heineke. You're starting Terry McLaurin. That's about it. Houston's a bad defense, so you can start a lot of players if you would like, but I'm going to stick with the guys that I just mentioned. Cowboys and Vikings, 48.5 game total, and the Cowboys are 4.5 favorite. And I actually agree with this one here. Yes, the Vikings are still out to prove that they are actually a legitimate team. They started that last week where they proved they could beat Buffalo in Buffalo against Josh Allen. They did it. They got lucky with some plays, though, too. I watched that game, the end of that game at least. They got lucky. But they're still a decent team. I like, for the Cowboys side, you like starting Dak Prescott. I actually like starting the wide receivers more than the running backs this week. One, Zeke Elliott looks to be back, so that's going to cut into Tony Pollard. We all know Tony Pollard's the better running back at this point. That's a known fact, not only by what's on paper, what we see as far as the data shows us, but what we see with our eyes. This is not hard to see that Tony Pollard's better. He gets more yards per carry. He's more dynamic as a runner. He does more with each opportunity that he has. So it hurts Tony Pollard, but I'd still start him. Because who knows if Zeke's going to actually make it the full game. Minnesota's a better run defense than they are pass defense, though. So I feel more confident starting Lamb, Gallup. And if you're really in a pinch, Noah Brown, maybe. But you have to be really in a deep league for that one. And then Dalton Schultz as well. On Minnesota's side, it's the usual suspects. Now, Dallas is a very good defense. Minnesota's proven that they can put up points against good defenses, though. So you're obviously starting Jefferson. I like Adam Thielen in this spot. You can still start Kirk Cousins. He may have a Kirk Cousins game, but he may not. He may have a better game than what Kirk Cousins does. So you can start him. Dalvin Cook's a good play, but again, Dallas is a good defense, so just be ready for a little bit lower output. That's about it. And then you're still starting Hawkinson because tight end's a wasteland. We don't like it. All right. Next game up, Bengals and Steelers. The Bengals are a 4-point favorite. I actually still like the Steelers in this game. I know the Steelers are bad, but I don't know. I just get a feeling. That's really all it is. It's a feeling. I like the Steelers in this game. It's a 40.5 game total. Bengals, like I said, are a 4-point favorite. You're going to start Burrow. You're going to start Mixon. You're going to start Higgins. You're going to start Boyd. You're going to stream Hayden Hurst. That's an obvious. Those are all the obvious plays for Cincinnati. There's no really deep sleeper there for Cincinnati. You hope the offensive line is getting better. You hope that with the addition of TJ Watt back from injury and Mika Fitzpatrick back, that doesn't hurt them too bad for on the Bengals side. On the Steelers side, you're going to have to play it. If Harris is up and he's Harris, you're going to play Najee Harris. Or if you believe the hype about Jaylen Warren, you're going to play Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren statistically has been better, but you can't discount what the talent is for Najee Harris. I'm not ready to give up on Harris quite yet. But if you have Harris and you don't have Warren, and Warren's out there on the waiver wire, go get him, stash him on your bench. You need him as a backup. It's going to happen. The takeover is probably going to happen sometime. It's not quite as bad as Fournette and Rachaad White, who are on bye this week, but it's not quite as bad as that situation, but it's getting close. So be ready for that. Kenny Pickett's actually a really good streamer this week, so he's an under the radar. I like him, which means I actually like Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. And since Claypool went to Chicago, I like Pratt Freiermuth a lot more than when I did when Claypool was there. So that's my take on that game. Chiefs and the Chargers. Highest game total of the week. 52 points. So let's talk the Chiefs side. You are obviously starting Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Those are duh. If you're questioning that, quit playing fantasy football. For the Chiefs side, though, wide receivers. MVS should play. He's been limited with injuries and I think an illness, but he should play. Juju's still ruled out in concussion protocol. Hardman is also in IR, so he's going to miss. It's the second of, I think, 4 to 6 games. So that does mean, yes, Kadarius Toney does get a bump in what production he has, but let's not go over our skis here. If you hear, well, this is the Tyreek Hill replacement. No, I said this when they traded for him. This is not the Tyreek Hill replacement. This is the McCole Hardman replacement, honestly. This is a guy that gives you a boost in a lot of different roles. He can play a lot of different ways. This is not the Tyreek Hill replacement. The pass catcher I really like, that's very under the radar. If you need somebody, doesn't have to be that deep a league either. Justin Watson. Justin Watson has 2 touchdowns this year already. Justin Watson plays that Juju role. He's going to get more volume, more C with Juju being out than what he typically does per game. Now, I like Isaiah Pacheco. You can start Isaiah Pacheco this week. The Chargers are a bad run defense. Pacheco runs hard. He was named the starter for a reason. We saw it where Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 6 snaps all game last game. Pacheco has the most rushing opportunity he had last week at 16. So good offense. He's going to start finding the end zone. You can also start Jerick McKinnon. He's that dynamic third down back. On the Chargers side, play Justin Herbert. Don't lose faith in him. He's a good player. Also play Austin Eckler, obviously. But who should be back? Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. They both logged full practices on Friday. They should both be back. Gerald Everett's also questionable, but he should be playing. If they're full strength, I like them a lot better. But it's going to be an interesting game. Again, divisional game, pandemonium. These teams play each other twice a year, every year. They know how to play each other. And what happened week 1 will not happen in the second meeting. I say week 1, but the first time these teams met. This will not happen in the second meeting. So just be ready for that. This could be a very high-scoring affair. It also could be really defensive battle. The last time these guys faced in LA, I think there was a total of 4 turnovers. A lot of 4th down calls. So we don't know. Let's see what happens. There's a lot of straightforward things going on, though. If you have Williams and Allen, those are the big 2 question marks. If you want a sleeper, it's Justin Watson. I'm calling it now. It's Justin Watson. Don't forget about him. Don't go all ham on Kadarius Toney. He's going to get his. But Justin Watson also is going to get his. Last game discussed is Niners and Cardinals. Niners are an 8-point favorite, and this is a 43.5 game total for this game. On the Niners side, it's pretty simple. Stream Garoppolo, play CMC. You can honestly play Elijah Mitchell. He gets the rushing share. CMC gets some rushing. He gets more of the pass work. Play Debo. You want to really play Ayuk, though. He's the better, more consistent wide receiver for San Francisco. And you play George Kittle. He is now in form. He's healthy. He's in form. He's going to be up there with Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews soon. On the Cardinals side, if you have Kyler Murray, pay attention. Have a backup plan. Don't rely on it. He's a game-time decision with his hamstring. I mean, Call of Duty injury. No, wait, I mean hamstring, actually. Injury. Hopkins showed up on the injury report. Just be monitoring that. Marquise Brown is designated off IR, but, and I do have Marquise Brown in a few leagues. I'm waiting. I'm not playing it this week. I'm going to wait. With both Hopkins and Brown, I think that relegates Rondale Moore a little bit less in what target share he gets for the season or for each week. So I think this team operates with two major wide receivers, and Rondale Moore gets kind of the leftovers. James Conner is really the workhorse in this one. I don't like it. He's very injury prone. But with shipping off Eno Benjamin, that actually shows that Keontae Ingram is the guy that will be the direct backup. Something were to happen, it's Keontae Ingram you want to have ready to go just in case. So that concludes for this week. Again, like I said, we'll have a condensed week next week with the holidays. But in preparation for this week, I hope your fantasy team all the best and best fortune for this week. I know some of you are probably vying for playoff spots. Some of you are trying to see what can we do to secure our playoff spots even more. But may your teams have best of luck this week against your opponents. And let's get ready for week 11 in fantasy football.